Hello, this is Dr. E, and I'm going to be talking about section 1.3 on aquatic biomes. The learning objective here is to describe the global distribution and principal environmental aspects of aquatic biomes, everything from freshwater to marine biomes, and the distribution of these, and the suggested skills to be explained these concepts and processes. So, characteristics of aquatic biome. How salty is it? What is its salinity? How much salt is there in the body of water? This determines which species can survive and the usability for drinking it versus, for example, freshwater versus estuaries versus ocean, fresh, mixture, and salt. The depth, how deep is it? This influences how much sunlight can penetrate and reach the plants below the surface for photosynthesis. The flow determines which plants and organisms can survive and how much oxygen can dissolve in the water. Temperature, warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen, so it can support fewer aquatic organisms. So freshwater lakes and rivers have a high oxygen due to its flowing, bubbling over the rocks, mixing with water and air, also carrying nutrient-rich sediments that can be deposited at deltas and floodplains. This leads to fertile soil. The lakes are standing bodies of fresh water. They're key drinking resources. You can see the different areas of the lake. For example, the littoral is literally at the side. It's shallow, oftentimes with plants that emerge just above the water. Limnitic is where the light can reach is photosynthetic that reaches down here. But there are no rooted plants because it's only phytoplankton because the benthic zone is too deep. Profundo is too deep for sunlight, therefore there is no photosynthesis and no plants. Benthic is the line along the bottom that can go all the way from the littoral zone all the way to the bottom. It's very, very nutrient rich. It's where the invertebrates or bugs live, and they break down the nutrients from basically the death of the plants, plants, the animals, and when they go number 2. Freshwater wetlands. For example, a wetland is an area with soil submerged or saturated in water for at least part of the year, shallow enough for plants to emerge. Plants living here have to be adapted to living with roots submerged in standing water. For example, cattails, lily pads, or reeds. The benefits of wetlands: it stores excess water during storms, lessening floods. It recharges groundwater by absorbing rainfall into the soil. The roots of wetland plants filter pollutants from water draining through. The high plant growth due to lots of water nutrients due to the dead organic material in the plants. Here we have a swamp, a cypress tree. Notice how the roots go out to help support it in the water. We've got a marsh which has lots of reeds and cattails. We have a bog, such as spruce trees and moss all around them. Estuaries are areas where rivers empty into the ocean. It's a mix of fresh and salt water where the species are adapted to this, for example, mangrove trees. They're highly productive, huge amounts of plant growth due to tons and tons of nutrients coming down the river. And that sediment is deposited in the estuaries. A salt marsh is an estuary habitat along the coast in temperate climates. It's a breeding ground. Many fish from the ocean or from freshwater and shellfish all breed there and leave their babies. This is an example of a salt marsh. Mangrove swamps. Mangrove swamps are an estuary habitat along the coast of tropical climates. Mangrove trees with long, stilt roots stabilize shorelines and help provide habitat for many species of fish and shellfish. What's fascinating to me about these mangroves, these break off and they'll travel hundreds, if not thousands of miles. As soon as they land in a tropical land, they will start growing. A coral reef is warm, shallow water beyond the shoreline, most diverse marine ocean biome on Earth. There's a mutualistic relationship between coral, which are the animals, and the algae, which are the plants. The coral takes CO2 out of the water to create calcium carbonate, which is the exoskeleton of the reef, and it also provides CO2 to the algae. The algae live in the reef and provide sugar to the coral through photosynthesis. Both species rely on each other, that's why it's a mutualistic. Coral can't survive without the energy from this algae, and the algae need the home of the reef and CO2 from the coral. Intertidal zones is a narrow strip of land along the coastline between high and low tide. Organisms must be adapted to survive crashing waves and direct sunlight and heat during the low tide. For example, barnacles, sea crabs, sea stars, crabs can attach themselves to the rocks. Shells and tough outer skin can prevent drying out, or called desiccation, during low tides. Different organisms are adapted to live in different zones. For example, the spiral wrack is a type of seaweed, curls up and secretes mucus to retain water during low tide. The open ocean has low productivity. It's the largest on the planet, but per square meter, it has very low productivity. However, it has the highest productivity of all biomes because it's so used. It only has algae and phytoplankton to survive in most of the ocean. It's so large that algae and phytoplankton in the ocean produce a lot of the Earth's O2 and absorb tons and tons of the CO2. The photic area is the area where sunlight can reach it, where photosynthesis can occur. Aphotic, also known as the abyss, is where it's too deep for sunlight. These are the organisms that live down there, where oftentimes they have lights to attract other organisms. So practice FRQ 1.3. Can you identify an organism found in an aquatic biome? And can you explain how that organism is uniquely adapted to live in that biome? Thank you, and I hope that has been helpful.